So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope everything's good wherever you are. Guys, smash the like button on this video, share the video, hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Guys, I wanted to talk Jermell Charlo. Jermell Charlo becomes undisputed 154 light middleweight champion of the world by beating Brian Castano in 10 rounds. It was a great fight, epic war, back and forth. It's basically like their first fight. You know, Jermell Charlo and Castano both put it on the line. You got to give credit to both. Both were brilliant warriors, fought hard. You know, Castano fought very hard. You know, Charlo got hit with a lot of shots. He showed a lot of heart. He showed a lot of toughness. He showed a great chin. Castano as well showed a great heart, great shit, great chin. It was an epic war, back and forth action. Both guys, like I said, putting it on the line and giving us a very entertaining scrap. One of the fight of the year contender. It was a really good fight. Enjoyed it. And you know, Jermell Charlo is the 154-pound undisputed champion. You know, it's about time people put respect on Jermell Charlo's name. Jermell Charlo is somebody that a lot of people said after the Harrison fight when he got beat that he's going to avoid Tony Harrison. He came back in the rematch and knocked Tony Harrison out. After Brian Castano, a lot of people thought that Brian Castano won the first fight. It was given a draw. Charlo came under a lot of criticism. Charlo said he was going to knock him out in the rematch. And Charlo came back and did just that. He stopped Brian Castano in 10 rounds. And what that shows is this guy, firstly, he's got a lot of heart. You know, he's willing to correct his mistakes. He's willing to avenge his losses or, you know, in this case, a draw. In Tony Harrison's case, a loss. And he comes back and he doesn't just beat the guys, he stops the guys. You know, in the 10th round, he landed a left hook and it kind of had a delayed reaction and Castano went down and I think that was it. I think that fight finished the fight. That basically punch finished the fight. Castano got back up and, you know, Jermell Charlo followed up with, a shot. I think he hit him with a right hand and a left hand, and then he hit him with a left hook to the body, and that was it. And Castano went down, and the referee just stopped the fight, which was a fair stoppage. You know, Castano was done, and Jermell Charlo created history by becoming the first light middleweight to ever become undisputed. Jermell Charlo is a very good fighter, very good fighter, and he's a warrior. He's fun to watch, but it's about time I think people put respect on his name. You know, to come back from those essentially a defeat against Harrison, a draw against Castano, and then beat them emphatically in the rematch, I think shows the kind of guy that Charlo is. And I think he definitely enters the top 10 pound for pound list. I think a lot of people always overlook Charlo. I never really understood why people overlook Charlo. Charlo's definitely not overrated. Charlo's a great fighter. You know, a lot of people were saying after the Brian Castano fight, he's overrated. Oh, he's not going to take this rematch. How many people, I remember at the time, a lot of people were criticizing Charlo and saying Charlo will not take the rematch against Brian Castano, that he'll avoid Brian Castano. Brian Castano is all wrong stylistically. Brian Castano will beat him again. And he goes in there and he knocks Brian Castano out. So the point I'm trying to make is, I think you have to put respect on this guy's name now. He's beaten everybody at 154 pounds, cleaned out the division. Let's see what his next move is. Is he going to stay at 154 pounds? It looked like at the post fight, I personally thought that Jermell Charlo, if he becomes undisputed, he'll go up. But it actually looks like he may stay at 154 pounds. It doesn't look like he has the intention of moving up. Which is surprising because I thought he would have done it all now. But he was talking about like, oh, how are you gonna still want to fight on 154 because they're gonna be a lot of sanctioning fees? And he said, well, I've got a great management team, and obviously they'll have to pay me more money for things like this. So it seems like he's definitely gonna stay at 154 pounds, which is surprising. Someone said to me, do you think he's gonna move up to 160 because his brother's at 160? Maybe he may just look to become a dominant 154-pound champion and look to defend his belts. But the only problem he'll have is that I know there's been a lot of fight talk about Crawford, which obviously he may be interested in. That would be a great fight if Crawford beats Spence. But if Spence moves up to 154 pound, how is that going to work? Because Spence is going to want to fight the best. So this is what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't really get how if Spence moves up to 154 and Spence wants to be a champion and Jermell has all the belts, then that's the guy that Spence is going to have to go after. So I don't really understand how that's going to work. And if I'm not mistaken, aren't Spence and Charlo trained by the same guy in Derek James? So it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out, because Charlo hasn't really got many big fights at 154 left, apart from the guys potentially moving up from welterweight, which would be the biggest fights. Like, there was a lot of talk about Charlo fighting Danny Garcia. I don't think that's a good fight for Danny Garcia, to be honest with you. I think Charlo's probably a better boxer than Garcia, and he punches harder, and Charlo's pretty sturdy and got a good chin. And Garcia might be too small for someone like Charlo anyway, because Garcia, remember, is 140-pounder. So I don't think that's going to be a fight that people are going to be interested in. Now, a fight that I would be interested in, it's a bit out of the blue, is probably Jaron Boots Ennis. If Jaron Boots Ennis can't get a Spencer Crawford fight, I reckon he probably should move up and look to fight Jermell Charlo. But again, would Jermell Charlo want to fight Jaron Boots Ennis, an up-and-coming rising star? Probably not at this point. You know, Charlo right now will probably want big fights. He'd probably want really big money fights and big fights that, you know, going to add to his legacy. And Boots Ennis at this particular point isn't that. So who's Charlo really going to stick around for at 154? Now, there's a talk about Tim Tszyu. There's talk about Fundora. There's talk about these guys. But really, are these big fights? Are these really, really big fights that are going to, you know, really do a lot for Jermell Charlo? Probably not. So, in my opinion, it's going to be really interesting. And even but the problem is at 160, there's not a lot of guys at 160. Like, there's Golovkin, who's a unified champion, who's not going to fight Jermell Charlo, in my opinion. There's his brother. And then there's the winner of Janibek and the Dingum, is it? So the point I'm trying to make is, what fights are there out there for him at middleweight? So really, when you think about it, at 154 and middleweight, there's not a lot of fights out there for him. You know, the only big fight at middleweight is Golovkin, and I don't see Golovkin fighting him. And the only other, what fight is there? The fights at 154, there aren't any fights at 154 that are that big. The only fights that are big are the welterweights moving up, like your Crawford or Spence, and he's already said he's not going to fight Spence. So that's the point I'm trying to make. Like, what is there for Jermell Charlo that makes a lot of sense? Because right now he's become undisputed. He's put his name in the history books. Now, surely it would be about big fights and looking to, you know, make as much money as he can, secure his financial future, which he may have already done, by the way, but creating a bigger legacy. And that can only be done by having big fights against big names. But there aren't really a lot of big names out there at 160, 154 or 147 moving up for him. There's only like Crawford and Spence, and one of them he's not going to fight. So what is there for Jermell Charlo? Who is it that you really want to see? This is what I mean. He may have to become a fighter that just defends his belts, that looks to defend his belts, to be honest. And that might be what Jermell Charlo does, because there's no, around the horizon, there's no real big fights out there for him. The only fight that you can think of that is massive is Crawford. And if Crawford loses to Spence, then that fight's not that big either. So, and he's not going to fight Errol Spence. So I personally think the fight that would make a lot of sense is Errol Spence. Like Mike Tyson said, even though, you know, those guys are friends, I think that, you know, they should fight each other. And I think they should. And I wouldn't be surprised if something kicks off between them and they do fight each other in the future. Just because I think the fight's too big. And when they say they're friends and stuff, like, many friends in boxing have fought each other, you know. So I personally think that would be a monster fight. A Crawford fight, if Crawford beats Spence, that's a monster fight for sure. But going off that, I'm going to make a video about Crawford and Charlo. But yeah, on that performance, I think it's very difficult for Crawford to beat Jermell Charlo. I think Jermell Charlo is not as good a boxer as Crawford, but I think Jermell Charlo is a good enough boxer to get to Crawford. And I think Jermell Charlo has huge punching power. He's very explosive. He's got dynamite in both hands. That would be a very tough matchup for someone like Terence Crawford. I've just got to be brutally honest. I like Crawford. You know, you guys know I'm a Crawford fan. But if I'm being honest, you know, Jermell Charlo is very big at the weight. He's very strong. He can punch with both hands. I think that's a very tough fight. But again, Crawford is special. So, you know, we have to wait and see. But look, Jermell Charlo, man, you got to give him props. Jermell Charlo becoming undisputed. I'm just happy for him, because a lot of people, like I said, were writing him off after the Harrison fight, saying that, you know, he can't box and he can easily be outboxed. And I still think that. I think Jermell Charlo defense isn't the great. He took a lot of shots on the chin, you know, and if he moves up weight and fights a bigger man, that could be dangerous. But yeah, he does get caught with a lot of shots. Jermell Charlo does get caught. Brian Castano caught him a number of times, you know, with a lot of clean shots on the chin, which showed he's got a great chin. But again, yeah, you don't want to be getting caught with too many clean shots like that. His defense isn't the greatest, but again, he's definitely a very, very good, solid fighter. I think, and one that's going to be tough to beat, by the way. You know, for me, he's very hungry. He's got that will to win, that desire. And he's a guy that even if he loses a fight or gets a draw, he comes back from the setback very well. Because look, he had a draw with Castano, and look how he came back. He had a loss against Harrison, and it burnt him. He was even crying at the press conference when he lost to Harrison. And look at the way he came back. Look at the way he came back and knocked Harrison out. Look at the way he came back from the Castano draw and beat Castano. So Jermell Charlo is a really, really good fighter. He's hungry and he wants to beat the best. So yeah, respect to Jermell Charlo. I do think he's one of the top fighters in boxing. And he went off at Mike Coppinger. He went off on Mike Coppinger because he said that, you know, ESPN are always hating, never putting him on the pound for pound list. And for me, Jermell Charlo has been overlooked, but he can't be overlooked anymore. He's undisputed champion. He holds all the belts at light middleweight, and he's one of the best fighters in the sport now. I think we have to give him that respect. He's definitely one of the best fighters out there in the sport. And for me, he's definitely now top 10. You could probably put him at 6 or 7. Maybe even some people might put him higher. But yeah, he deserves his credit and deserves his due. He's a great fighter. He's a very, very tough man. He can punch. He's a decent boxer as well. But yeah, his punching power at that weight is phenomenal. He stops guys, you know, he's stopping guys at high level. Like he stopped Tony Harrison, he stopped Brian Castano, he stopped Rosario. You know, he's virtually stopping everybody. That's, you know, yeah, he's a great fighter, man. He's a great, great fighter. I like Jermell Charlo. I've really liked him, and also liked his competitiveness because he's fighting all the best. He's cleaned out a division and fought all the best in the division. He's not ducked and dodged any challenge. Even when he's had adversity, he's come back and fought that guy in a rematch and he's beaten him. So again, you have to respect that. He's a proper champion. He's a proper champion. Maybe Jermell Charlo should learn something from his brother, you know, who is cleaned out a division, who's fought all the best. And I think Jermell is showing the way for Jermell, what Jermell needs to do, you know, and maybe he'll be on the pound for pound list if he does what Jermell does. But Jermell was, yeah, what a great performance, a great fight. Props to Brian Castano as well, because Brian Castano put it all on the line as well. He gave us a great fight. It was very entertaining and I enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think about Jermell Charlo. Let me know what you think about the performance. Leave your thoughts in the comment section and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace, guys.